Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are calling in from. I'm Phil Moses, Director of CADRE. Thanks for joining CADRE's webinar, Creating Change, Student-Led IEPs and Youth Engagement as a Dispute Resolution Option. Today's webinar continues a series that began in 2010. And today's webinar is being presented by David Friedman, Monet Wright, and Sarah Grime. You should hopefully see a poll question on the screen. Hopefully there'll be a poll questions appearing. If they do, please take a minute to answer these questions. Phone lines have been muted to minimize interruptions. There's our poll. You can enter any questions or comments into the chat box or questions box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. The PowerPoint for this webinar is available at the link in the chat box. Scroll to the bottom of the page. It's also in the handout pod located above the chat box. This is the first webinar that we have conducted on this new platform, so please bear with us if we experience any glitches. We have three outstanding individuals presenting today. David Friedman is 18 years old and a senior at North Eugene High School. He experiences dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, and ADHD. He was diagnosed at a young age, so he spent most of his school years learning by trial and error to navigate the school system. He is active with Youth Move Oregon, where he has trained in public speaking and is currently serving as a mentor. Monet Wright works on youth leadership initiatives at School Talk, including leading workshops and helping to prepare other Washington, D.C. students to lead workshops at the annual Secondary Transition Forum. She is a senior at KIPP DC College Preparatory School. After she graduates, she plans on majoring in social work with a focus on toddler mental health. Sarah Grime serves as a conflict resolution specialist and project director for School Talk, which is a nonprofit focused on special education dispute resolution in Washington, D.C. Sarah manages several initiatives and projects focused on increasing collaboration to ensure the successful transition of youth with disabilities from school into post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. She has been involved in implementing a student-led individualized education program process in DC and has been supporting its expansion. It is our good fortune to have David, Monet, and Sarah with us today. I now turn it over to them. Sarah?
Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay. And is my PowerPoint showing now? Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My name is Sarah Grime. Thanks for the introduction, Phil. I work for an organization called School Talk, and my primary focus is on our youth engagement initiatives, which we'll talk about as we go today. We're presenting today on student-led IEPs and youth engagement as a dispute resolution option. We'll get more into that in a minute. I'm going to have my colleague Monet introduce herself now.
Hi, I'm Monet. I intern at School Talk. I'm a youth leader, and I'm a senior at KIPP.
And we'll get some more information out of her as we go as well. Is David on the line?
Unfortunately, David is not here quite yet, so you just need to proceed without him, and hopefully he will be here very soon.
Okay. So I was going to just have David and Monet start out by talking a little bit about where they're from and where they go to school to just kind of, set the stage for the participants. So Monet, since you're here now, can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and where you've gone to school along the way?
I grew up in Washington, D.C. I go to college preparatory, and I've been going there since 5th grade. And that's it.
Okay. So today we're focusing on StudentLed IEPs and youth engagement as a dispute resolution option. I think a lot of you are familiar with the CADRE continuum, and we're really focused at School Talk on ensuring that youth engagement is part of the dispute resolution process in DC, specifically in stage 1 prevention, increasing the capacity of students to meaningfully participate, collaborate, and problem solve in their own education, and then transferring that into their adult life as they leave school. And will you guys just let me know when David is on?
Yes, we will.
And one of the things I wanted to note is a lot of today's presentation is focused on student-led IEPs, but I also want to call attention to youth engagement. In DC, that has looked, there's a couple of different ways that's been happening, but one of the things that we're really proud of that Monet has been really involved in are peer-to-peer approaches. So students leading workshops for other students around self-advocacy, employment, and a variety of topics. And so moving beyond their IEPs and leading workshops also out in the community. We have students that are involved in many different boards. Monet specifically has been appointed by the mayor for our anti-bullying task force in DC, and we have another student on our state advisory panel for special education. So when we mention youth engagement, we're not just talking about involving students in the IEP process, even though that's a lot of the focus of the presentation today, but also involving them in ensuring that their voice is coming across all areas of the work to ensure that their transition to adult life is successful as it can be. So, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those things later on, but the task force that Monet is part of is not a disability-specific task force. That's a task force that works with our schools in DC, and they, so that's a really cool thing to note. So I think it's important to start out by defining what we specifically mean by student-led IEPs. I know a lot of times when I give presentations about youth engagement and student-led IEPs, people sometimes and schools sometimes get nervous because when you hear the word student-led IEP, you think, okay, they're going to put a kid in front of an IEP team meeting and they're going to lead the whole thing and they're going to be completely on their own, and it sometimes makes parents, teachers, educators, and others a little bit nervous. But when we talk about student-led IEPs, that's the term we're using, but it means it encompasses a lot more than that. It occurs within the context of the overall IEP process. The specific role that a student takes varies and is individualized based on, their age, needs, and abilities. And this is an approach that can be used from K to 12 and if individualized for the child's age. And it also requires investment in preparing students and parents. So in terms of substance, meaning what we mean when we say student-led IEPs is meaningful student participation in the development of their IEP. That can be in an actual meeting, that can be in the development of what's written in their IEP. The student takes a leadership role and decision-making role somewhere in that process. So maybe they're deciding who gets invited to their IEP maybe they are going in and doing introductions at their IEP all the way to leading it. And when David is on, we can go back and provide some more examples. But I also wanted to ask Monet, well, we'll move to the next slide and then we'll have Monet go. So as I just mentioned, the IEP participation spectrum is pretty broad. Student engagement levels are based on individual needs and abilities. So the IEP can take place without the student present, but maybe the student has done some pre-work. Maybe they've prepared something that a teacher can show, all the way to students leading the full meeting. And then you kind of see the stuff in the middle, which is that they actively participate, but they might not be in charge of the whole thing. So I was wondering, Monet, could you talk to them a little bit about ways that you've participated, how old you were when you went to your first IEP meeting, and then different ways that you've participated in your meetings?
I started going to my IEP meetings when I was 10. And the way I interact in it, because they asked me did I want to be in it, and I said yes. And then they will talk about what my disability is, and then they let me talk about it, and we just set goals for myself and help me to help. They'll help me help, no. I would help them help me to figure out what I need to learn or what I need to set myself, the goals that I need to set for myself so I can learn better.
And what do you do now that you're a senior in high school when you go to the meetings? Are you participating in the same way? Or?
Yes.
So this is just some of the research around student engagement as well as student-led IEPs. Students develop a stronger self-advocacy and self-determination skills, which lead to increased self-confidence. Students gain greater knowledge of their disability and their accommodations when they're involved in the process, as well as their goals, like Monet mentioned. When they're involved in the process, they know the goals that they need to meet, and they're part of coming up with those goals, which holds them accountable. There's also increased, this is one of my personal favorites, increased parental and general education teacher participation. So when students are involved in the IEP meetings, parents and general education teachers are more likely to come and participate. There's also another one of my favorites, a lot less tension. Everybody's really well behaved in meetings when students are present and they're leading part of the meeting. As I'm sure all of you know, IEP meetings can be pretty hostile and can really focus on deficits sometimes and on things that nobody wants to talk about, and can really make students feel not great by the time they walk out the door after a meeting. So when a student is actively involved and not just sitting there and listening, it reduces some of those tensions, and it allows the meeting to be more focused on their abilities and the goals and markers that they need to hit. There's also reduced stigma associated with having a disability when a student is involved and can speak about their disability and knows what the meeting is for and why they're having it. And then allowing students to play a decision-making role leads to increased student engagement and accountability. They know their goals, they know what they have to hit, they're part of making those goals, so they're much more apt to strive to reach them when they're part of the decision. Also, improved transition outcomes.
So, and let me just interject. Unfortunately, David is having a small situation and is unable to join us today, so we're just going to need to proceed as best we can, and we also understand that we may wrap up a bit earlier than we would otherwise expect to without him participating. So let's just do the best we can. Thank you, Sarah and Monet.
Yeah, and Monet and I will try to add in some examples that we've experienced in DC as we go along. So, yeah. So here's these are just tips for getting started with student-led IEPs. You know, first and foremost, you need the buy-in and training for schools, preparing schools as well as parents. When David and I presented this topic in the past, he shared from his personal experience here that, you know, when you can't just send a student into a meeting and have them say, I'm here to participate, because it doesn't always go so well with the educators and parents if they're not prepared and they haven't provided a safe place for that student to participate. So getting the buy-in and the training for the schools to create those spaces where students feel like they can go in and feel like their voice is being heard. I know that David has talked in the past about going into a meeting and being allowed to talk in his meeting but not really feeling like he was being heard. So that's where the buy-in comes in, because it really needs to be a space where we're not just having students talk, but they're also being heard. What they're saying is being recognized. There's also assessing the student's self-advocacy skills. This is a very individualized process, student-led IEPs, in terms of the ages, abilities of the students. So beginning with assessing where the student is in the process in order to meet them where they are is really important. There's a variety of assessments and self-determination checklists at imdetermined.org, which is a Virginia project that we've partnered with in DC. And we've used their assessments before, and I'm sure all of you know a lot of different self-advocacy and self-determination assessments available across the states, but we use theirs specifically and I found them really helpful. And then using the results of those assessments to work with students to develop a specific goal and a plan for that student, which might be I'm going to go in and I'm going to lead the entire meeting, or it might be I'm going to work with you to write down some goals that I want you to share in the meeting. And then there's working with the student to prepare them, and then there's actually letting them implement their plan for how they're going to participate. In DC, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education and our secondary transition community of practice provided materials and coaching and support to our schools. We're going to talk about that a little more in a few minutes. And Monet, has there been anything that you have had to do to prepare kind of your teachers or family when you've participated in the meetings? No, they were pretty prepared.
Yeah.
So Monet's school, part of their culture is to have them start coming to their meetings beginning in 5th grade. So their teachers and school are pretty well prepared to receive them and have them participate, because that's part of their school culture. So some steps for preparing students: building self-awareness. This is working with students around understanding their disability, their abilities and limitations, or we like to say needs, their needs and supports, as well as their goals. As well as understanding the IEP process, because as an adult working in the education system, the IEP process is really confusing, has a lot of paperwork and legal terms, so breaking that down and working with students to help them understand the process, including their rights and how they fit into that process, and it's all about them. And then planning for participation. These are some examples, introductions and facilitation of how the meeting's going to go, setting some ground rules for when students are there participating, using technology, creating an out for a student or a safe word. So maybe a student's going in for the first time in the meeting starts to maybe it devolves and starts getting a little hostile, and or the student gets nervous and uncomfortable, having kind of a safe word that they can say, and maybe they step out of the meeting. Just ensuring that it's a safe space and setting up mechanisms to provide that. And then providing students with lots of opportunities for practice. So Monet, can you talk about when you participate in your IEP meetings, what do you do to prepare ahead of time?
I meet with my little counselor person, and we just talk about the goals that I want to set for myself and my grades and stuff, and but how what I'm gonna do after high school.
So that's part of your transition plan.
Yeah.
And so who helps you prepare? You have a counselor?
Yeah.
Awesome. So another tool to use in IEP meetings is assistive technology. Some students are really like to get in front of a group and talk about what their needs are. Other students prefer to use PowerPoints or show short videos. Another thing that has been effective in other states are students demonstrating how their assistive technology works, specifically for general education teachers. And there's a video from I'm Determined that we don't have time to show today, but I encourage you guys to watch it, where students talk about, I believe he's in college, and he talks about a professor saying he can't use his assistive technology, and then he demos how it works for the professor, and the professor is like, oh yeah, you can definitely use that. So doing that in an IEP meeting too, for educators or for parents who might not know what the assistive technology is for, showing them how you're specifically using it to participate in your education. Videotaping presentations ahead of time if a student is nervous is a really effective strategy. Recording the IEP meeting and then using that as a way to debrief with the student after so that they can make changes for their next meeting. For students who may just be more nervous, or for students who may have limited verbal abilities, using pictures to kind of show the story of your day can also be a way to participate. So there's a variety of different ways that students can participate. They can prepare and send invitations and decide who receives an invitation. They can also conduct introductions. One of the schools that we did a focus group with in DC were working with elementary age students, and they came in and they pointed at different people in the meeting and introduced each of them. Students can also make a presentation. They can communicate their strengths, weaknesses, needs, and interest. In DC, some of the students we've worked with after the project ended have since then, now they're in high school, and they've called me and told me that they're now requesting their own accommodations. Defining your goals, writing portions of the IEP, that might be the goals or your present levels of performance, and then all the way to facilitating all or part of the meeting. So Monet, how do you, when you participate, do you lead the entire meeting? Do you?
I start off the meeting, and mostly I kind of take over until I don't want to take over no more.
So what do you mean by take over? Can you describe to them the kind of things that you talk about in your meetings and kind of the way you lead it?
I start off with having a name and the reason why we did, and then I give them like the goals that I set for myself and what I'm going to do for myself in the future, and how my disability don't affect me. And I don't know what I'm talking about. And then they ask me questions, and then I answer them. And yeah.
Awesome. So these are just some tips for student-led IEPs. Be flexible about the way each school builds in time to work with students. It's going to look completely different at different schools depending on how the schools are structured. Encourage students to apply self-advocacy skills beyond the IEP meeting. The skills that they learn through participating in the IEP process are broadly applicable to, you know, making decisions about college, about work, about a variety of things after high school. Involving students in many different ways that work for them. Each student is at a different place, and this process is really about meeting them where they are. There's no kind of cookie cutter approach that we can use with all students. So really meeting them where they are in that moment and then supporting them to participate in ways that work for them. And then providing teachers and parents with tools for talking to students about their disability. This is a big piece of this, is the student really understanding their disability and how it impacts them so that they can participate and be involved in making decisions about their education. So these are just some of the impacts of increased participation. Students who lead IEP meetings gain greater awareness about their disability and the ways it impacts them. Understanding how their disability impacts their academic performance and then being able to set goals based on that. Increase self-determination skills. Knowledge about available and appropriate accommodations, and just an overall familiarity with the IEP process. The quote at the bottom, we did a focus group with self-advocates that are all adults when we were first starting this work with OSSI, and one of the adults, and I loved that he said this, that when you're out of school an adult, you have to take care of everything and you need practice. If only the parents talk, the kids won't be prepared for life. So he was saying that in reference to him wishing that he had been involved in his IEP process before he left high school. So I've referenced a little bit of project in DC. This was a collaborative initiative with our, funded by our Office of the State Superintendent of Education, but done collaboratively with our DC public school system, charter schools, the DC Secondary Transition Community Practice, and School Talk. So we had, I think, 2 charter schools and 2 public schools, or 3 charter schools and 2 public schools involved in the project, and we did, we produced we produced a video about it called the Best Me I Can Be video, and also a toolkit. The video and toolkit modules are listed here. Getting started, building self-awareness, understanding your IEP, preparing for participation, and then student-led IEPs, so that features some of the students leading their IEP meetings. This link is currently down, but we're working on sending you guys a link as soon as possible that will be able to get you to the video and the toolkit. The toolkit has descriptions of why each of these steps is important, descriptions of how to assist the student to accomplish this step, and then a list of tools, resources, and activities, and then there's an inspirational page with recommendations and tips. The toolkit is also divided by audience, so there's specific information for students, specific information for educators, and specific information for families. And then the video is geared towards educators on how to implement a process like this, and features educators, parents, staff from OSSI, as well as staff from the schools. and students doing this work. I'm not sure, were we able to get the video to work? We were going to show a short clip.
If you want to try it,
yes, I think we should try it. There's also, perhaps before you do that, there's a question in the chat box from the audience. At what age do you think a student should take the lead in his or her IEP meeting? And also, maybe helpful if when Monet speaks again, she might also be able to speak to that question. If she can either speak a little louder or perhaps move the whatever device you're using a little closer to her.
So I just moved it towards Monet. She's soft-spoken.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started participating?
Okay.
So she was 10 years old, which is 5th grade.
Yes.
You were, and that was kind of the way their school is structured, is that students with IEPs start going to the meetings in 5th grade. That was a decision made by that specific school. There's no, I wish there was an answer. There's not. It really depends on the parent as well as the school. In our focus groups that we did prior to the project, there were some schools that had kids as young as 2nd and 3rd grade coming in and doing introductions. There are other schools that the students start going to the meetings when IDEA says that they're mandated to invite them to the meetings. So it really depends, I think, on the comfort of the school, the student, and the parents or family as to when, that happens. But it can, I would encourage it as young as possible. And I think David, I can't remember exactly when he started going, but he was younger as well. But then he talks a little bit about he participated in different ways as he got older, to the point where he says now he goes and doesn't need his parents to come to the meetings, which is also really cool.
Thank you. Do you want to try and show that video?
Yeah, that would be great. So do I click on it from my end?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For some parents, it's like not my kid. This is not my kid, because there's a lot of guilt and shame behind it, thinking that maybe I've done something wrong that contributed to my child having this disability, not realizing that it's not anything that you've done. We all learn differently.
So Preston learned that he is a visual learner.
This is how I prefer to learn visual learning. When I see the stuff on the board, it is easy, and when the stuff is highlighted.
When he found out and he took the test and did the activity that we had along with the lesson, he really began to internalize, well, what does it mean to be a visual learner? And he asked my colleague, who's the teacher of the program, well, can I ask for visual aids in all my classes? And of course, the teacher said, well, yes, definitely.
Preston's just face when he was like, you mean I can tell teachers that I need visual representations of things that we're learning? I was like, yeah, you can do that. And he was just so genuinely like a huge weight had been taken off his shoulders.
He began to get visual aids, and the teachers, of course, were very receptive because he was asking for it.
We just need to.
Okay, so that was just the full video, I think, is 56 minutes, but the modules, you can watch it as an entire video, or you can watch, the modules can be viewed alone. And this is a film produced by Aussie, in collaboration with the other folks, and it's a really great film, and the students that are featured in the film are doing really cool things now. This was a few years ago. The student that you guys just saw, in that clip, Preston, he is in a youth leadership peer network in DC, and he leads workshops for other students. He is really great at talking to other students about his IEP. In another clip in the film, he talks about, or his aunt talks about how she was driving home one day and he started telling his younger brother what an IEP was and why he has it, and that just really helped her because she realized that he knew what it was and that he was starting to be able to advocate for what he needed from his teachers. And to the point where he's now in an inclusive math class, a decision he made with his IEP team, which I think is also talked about in the film. So I really encourage everybody to watch the full thing. It's a really great piece. These are just some quotes that we pulled from that specific film. One of the students said, "Now I can tell people like my teachers what I need, my goals, and what I don't need." That was a big thing for students that we worked with through this process. Was sometimes they felt like they were given things that they didn't need. And so communicating that was just as important as communicating what they did need. Another student said, "When I get to middle school, I want to achieve all my goals, especially my math goals. And when I grow up, I want to be an archaeologist, a scientist, a biologist, and a basketball player. My career goals are all involve math, which makes it important for me to strengthen my skills." So, you know, for students that are not participating in their meetings or are not aware that their meetings are happening, it's really difficult to expect a student to achieve a goal if they don't know that that goal exists. So, you know, she got really involved and realized that she needed to improve in math to meet her career goals. And then this is an educator. This last one's an educator. I've seen that what really determines a student's success is not the severity of their disability, it's how engaged they are and using strategies to overcome. The kids who really say, "Yes, I know that strategy works for me and I'm going to try it," they're the ones who do well. So this is just a little bit about the expansion in DC. Our public school system has a self-advocacy curriculum available in all of our high schools, I believe also available in our middle schools. The Office of the State Superintendent of Education and the Secondary Transition Community of Practice took the lead on the video that you guys just saw. They have also developed additional resources and videos for how to talk to students about their disabilities. Also a video geared towards parents, as well as a video for talking to students about their with more severe disabilities. And they're using all of these resources and videos as part of a public awareness campaign, getting them out to all of the schools. They do lots of instructional webinars for the schools and trainings for the schools as well that are aligned with they're now calling it a self-determination film series. So the original film on StudentLed IEPs is part of a 3-video series now, and they're working in the coming months on students leading a video that is for students, so that's really exciting as well. The Office of the State Superintendent of Education also has a professional learning community for student-led IEPs with students with more significant disabilities, and the focus of this is art-based initiatives. And then beyond IEPs, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, youth engagement is also a dispute resolution option, and there's many ways to engage students in their educations and in planning for their future. So Circles is one initiative that's also led by the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. There's restorative justice and special education, which is being led by School Talk and another group called Restorative DC. We also have the DC Youth Leaders Peer Network, and Monet can talk to you a little more about that in a second, but that's a network of DC youth who are involved in their schools as well as involved in meetings in the community, as well as they lead workshops for other youth on a variety of topics from employment to self-advocacy to disability history. So I joke with them all that I'm their adult contact for that network, but I joke with them all the time that it's my job to get students to do all of the talking and then I just go and watch. And then we also have School Talk is working collaboratively with a couple of different organizations on a grant from the HSC Foundation to lead some self-advocacy workshops in the DC metro area. So the students coming to these workshops are from Maryland, Virginia, and DC, and the students that are designing and leading the workshops are also from Virginia and DC and Maryland. And then the DC Special Education Cooperative is a nonprofit in DC that provides technical assistance to charter schools. They are doing a program over spring break called Alternative Spring Break, and some of the sessions are being led, the self-advocacy and youth leadership sessions that are part of that program are being led by members of the Youth Leaders Peer Network for other youth that are participating in the program. And then this is just another example. DC has partnered with I'm Determined Virginia, and they are funded by the Virginia Department of Education. They have a big annual youth leadership conference that's designed and led by youth, and they've graciously allowed DC youth to come and participate in the past, and they've also been working with DC to help us build similar practices in DC. Their youth have led workshops at our conferences, and then they're now leading workshops alongside DC youth. And I've provided their website. They have a lot of great youth engagement resources. So I was hoping David could talk a little bit about Youth Move Oregon. Maybe Phil can jump in, and then I was going to have Monet talk about the DC Youth Leaders Peer Network.
Yeah, we're trying to, we think David may be able to join us in the next 6 or 7 minutes remotely, so we're working on that. So we'll let you know. So perhaps Monet can speak a bit more about her experiences and get that phone real close to her. And then hopefully we'll have David on the line too shortly.
So Monet, can you tell everybody a little bit about the event that we just had and the way that you guys designed and led the workshops, and talk really loudly?
Friday we had a event that some students led, and other students from like different schools had to sit down and listen. But it's like the youth leaders, we just talked to the students about, well, this year the subject was about jobs. So we talked about what not to wear and what to wear in the interview, and problem solving at work. And we presented to them, and how we planned for was we'd be at school, we partnered up, and then we'll practice all the way up until the event happened, and then we come and we present. Yeah.
So hopefully everybody could hear her, but we just had a big annual secondary transition fair, and Monet's being humble. She designed the workshops. The topics were problem solving at work and dressing and interviewing for work. So Monet and I went to schools and worked with their members of the peer network to prepare them for the presentations. They did really cool presentations. Some of them used posters. Some of them did mock interviews and pulled people from their audience to act out how to do an appropriate interview. Monet's group specifically did problem solving, so they had scenarios of problems you might face at work, and then they acted out how to solve them and then gave students steps that they could do for solving conflicts at work. And it was just really cool to see. They led the workshops. I think there were 54 of them, and they led workshops in teams of 2. And they led them for other DC high school students with IEPs. I think we had like 400 or 420 students come, so we divided them, and they all led workshops for their peers. And Monet is also involved in leading workshops she works with School Talk, so she leads workshops for a whole bunch of different projects and programs. Self-advocacy on determining your interests, strengths, abilities, and needs, disability history, problem solving, a whole bunch of different topics. So the members of the network do that, and they also the logo was envisioned by members of the network, and then it was sketched by a member of the network too. So really trying to move towards youth leading all of the components and the adults stepping back and providing support when needed, but allowing them to lead. So that's going kind of beyond the IEPs across DC, and they've been doing a really great job, and now people can't get enough of them, so they're calling all the time and requesting them to speak at different things.
Sarah, I don't know if you can see the question in the chat box. There's a question about the involvement of Voc Rehab, and when did they start getting involved?
I'm trying to find the Voc. So is the question specifically when does Voc Rehab go to an IEP meeting?
I think that's right.
I think that depends. Voc Rehab has to have an invitation from the school, and I think it varies from state to state. DC does their transition plan starts at age 16. We've now moved it back. We just had legislation passed in DC where it's moved back to age 14. And also with the passing of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that pushes a lot of funding towards pre-employment transition services. So in DC, our Voc Rehab counselors are in all of the different schools. They go to IEP meetings when it makes sense, when they're working on the employment piece of the transition plan, and when there's a specific service that Voc Rehab would provide tied into that transition plan, that is when they would go. But Voc Rehab in DC is certainly involved in the schools even before that point in order to provide the pre-employment transition services.
Okay. There's also a couple of questions about some of your resources or some of the OSCE resources, the videos, etc., and if they're available on the website as the modules.
They are. The website is oscesecondarytransition.org. The website is currently down. We're working on getting it back up. So I will get you guys a link that that can be used. We also have hard copies of the DVDs that we can mail, but we're also working on fixing the links to the website, so those are all publicly available.
Do you expect the web address to change any, or it'll remain the one you just shared?
It'll remain the one that we shared. We just have to reactivate it. Yeah.
Excellent.
And then I see a question on why the student-led IEP is considered a dispute resolution practice. For me, coming from a conflict resolution background, all parties in a conflict have to be involved in ensuring that it can be resolved. And so student-led IEPs is a way to center it around the students. And if a student is involved, it relieves some of the tension. It also, you know, this process is about the student, and so for any issue to kind of be resolved related to special education, the student has to remain at the center, and student-led IEPs is a way that they can remain at the center of the process and be part of any anything moving forward if they're at the center of it, and that can help reduce conflict. There's another question, is there a specific curriculum you use to teach the students self-advocacy and help prepare them to participate in their IEP meetings? Our public school system in DC has a self-advocacy curriculum, but it really varies from school to school and state to state. I can give a couple examples. One of the charter schools that participated, to prepare their students, they were having them help with their present levels of performance, and they were working with them during the lunch period because that's the time of day that they had available. And so their students would come in during lunch, and there were some very dedicated teachers who would work with them at lunch. The DCPS school, one of the schools that participated, they had a curriculum, so they had a class designated to teaching self-advocacy. So it really varies from school to school.
Great. Folks are asking for you to share your contact information too as well, Sarah. We think we have David on the call, but we're not sure if we will actually be able to get him to do audio. We can see that he's online, but I don't know if he's actually called in or not.
Yeah, David, if you're there, if you enter your audio pin, you'll be able to speak.
Yeah. Hopefully, David, you heard that. Enter your audio pin, and then you'll be able to speak to everybody. And you can also use the chat box, David, if you're having a problem. And we apologize for our little technical glitch here. We appreciate your patience. And Sarah, feel free to keep speaking until we get David on.
Yeah, and do you just want to email out my contact information, or should I type it into the chat?
You can type it into the chat box.
This is Mel. Would you like me to try to mute David Friedman?
Yeah, we've unmuted him, but it says that he can't be unmuted until his audio pin is put in. But if you're able to do it, that would be great.
Yeah, if you can do it.
Able just press down.
And there's another question, Sarah, in the chat box.
Yeah, I see that.
Do you need me to read it?
No, I see it. It's in, it says,
Can you read it? Yeah, go ahead.
If we view student-led IEPs as a dispute resolution option, is it implying that there is a dispute when there isn't? the student is just exercising his or her rights, it should be a proactive process. I guess the entire presentation is on student-led IEPs and youth engagement, so, and that's why we kind of see it in the prevention stage of the CADRE continuum, because you're exactly right. If we get the students involved early on, then and they're involved in the process and they're engaged in their IEPs and engaged in their education, then we view it as prevention. So I'm calling it a dispute resolution option, but specifically in the prevention stage of the CADRE continuum, because you're right. This would be a proactive process before there's a dispute. So, yes.
Okay. Others should feel free to go ahead and type questions into the chat box.
And then it said there's another question about the age, and should the student have a PowerPoint or a written request to aid? I think that it really depends on the student. This is a really individualized process. So it depends on the age, on the abilities of the student, and on what they're comfortable with. Some students go in with an IEP meeting with a PowerPoint or an aid. Some go in having filled out their present levels of performance. Some go in with visual aids that might be nonverbal. They might have photos or something. So it really, that part really depends on the student. There isn't an exact age. So yeah.
Do you want to read that question? The next one?
Sure. So the next one is, would you consider this more of a proactive approach to dispute resolution? I would say yes, definitely proactive and on the prevention side. The next one is, have you ever had parents be resistant to their child knowing about their disability and being part of the process? Absolutely. And then how do you handle this? I think that's kind of a case-to-case basis. There is a video that's part of the self-determination film series, specifically featuring parents talking about how they talked to their student about their disability, or about that they had not talked to their student about their disability and why. And we got that question a lot during the demonstration project, and that's kind of where that film was born from. A lot of parents and educators asked for resources on how to talk to students about disabilities. I found a really great way to talk to them is to have other students talking to them, and it really depends on, you know, the parent and the student and, you know, what they're comfortable with. So we've definitely had that happen, and what our response to it has been trying to develop new resources that can help address that.
Great. And there's another question about a decrease in the number of filed complaints since the implementation of this process. I'm not sure if you can speak to that, but if you can.
That would definitely have to be a question for our Office of the State Superintendent of Education. The project I was speaking about was a demo project with a small number of students and a small number of schools, but they've definitely continued the work and the training. So I'd have to get that information from them.
Yeah, and is David by any chance on the able to speak? David?
Hello?
There he is.
Can you hear me? Yay!
David,
Awesome.
do you want to go ahead and share some of your experiences? Please, go ahead.
Oh, alright, let me put you on speaker. So I finally figured it out. I'm so happy right now. Okay. Alright. I'm so sorry I missed this so far, guys. Hello?
We can hear you, David, but you won't hear anything else other than yourself.
Okay. Here. Let's talk about social anxiety and how to prepare yourself in full of a room of adults. One thing we need to address when preparing students is social anxiety and overcoming those mental obstacles. I think that social anxiety needs to be something to touch on. I say this because that's the main obstacle that I had to face, not just in day-to-day life, but in these meetings. When you're this young and being put into meetings with your teachers and your parents, generally you associate it with things that you've done wrong. In my experience, even though these meetings were for me to express what was tough or hard for me to do during school and find out how to change that problem, it was also an environment that things I had done wrong were brought up. Instead of being voiced first, the teachers would voice themselves about the most recent incident they had with me. For example, I remember needing to talk about how the boy sitting across from me was very distracting. He smelled, he would often pick on me, and he would tell others how I didn't get my work done as fast as him. Instead of me being able to talk about this to my teachers, the teacher began to tell my parents why I was sent to the office that week. I had been provoked by this boy all day, so I pulled his chair out from under him before he sat down. In the end, I hadn't voiced myself and I hadn't expressed what I needed to do because the environment wasn't a comfortable place for me to be in where I was used to voicing myself and actually getting across what I needed to do. I had a very large amount of social anxiety in IEP meetings and various other meetings with teachers and other people that I didn't see as peers, and instead I saw them as mentors, and that was very intimidating to me. So what I wish that I had was somebody to tell me that I can talk to my teachers or other people that were adults like they were peers, because I do have a voice in these meetings, and I did have some power to, like if I had said something, I would have been heard and something would have been done about it. But I didn't know that for a really long time. That was one. Paige, do you guys want me to continue?
Yeah, oh, sure, please do. Fascinating.
Okay.
David, this is Sarah. I was wondering if you could share, during the last time we presented about this, you shared about speaking about voice. I was wondering if you could share that.
Sure, about what? Sorry, my phone
You had a speech you had written.
Oh, yes. Well, do you want me to do that first or last?
Whatever you want to do. I just love that one.
Okay. Well, I'll share one more experience and then I'll give the speech. So Sarah, where are you in the slideshow? Sarah?
I have it on the page that has the Youth Move logo, but I can move it back. Where would you like me to move it?
It just depends on what slide you are on, because I have things for slide 4, 6, 11, and 12.
Okay, you tell me which one and I'll move it.
Let's go to slide 11.
Okay.
All right. So, my experiences with using assistive technology. My social anxiety didn't only necessarily become a problem when I was in IEP meetings. It was also a fear of being seen different in a classroom setting. For me, to be able to agree to actually use an accommodation in a class that would help me learn, it had to be as non-disruptive as possible and easy to accommodate with the curriculum. I wouldn't ask for many things because I didn't think that it was possible for them to meet these goals. In the end, I think it would have benefited me to have someone sit down with me and help me build my self-confidence in a social setting and help reassure me that everyone learns different. All I wanted to do is fit in, but really, If I had the confidence to use the tools like a laptop or an audio recorder and owned them, making them seem that's just how I learned, I would have been able to have people accept me and excel in my own learning. I definitely think this is a big problem because I did try using various assistive technologies when I was in school, and I was made fun of constantly about it. But it's because I didn't necessarily like fight anybody on it. It's like somebody would call me out and say, "Oh, he's a dork because he's using like a squishy ball or whatever." And I wouldn't stand up for myself and say, well, I mean, like, of course you wish you had this squishy ball. Like, I know you want it. But the thing about it is that I didn't have the self-confidence to go through the multiple, like, 2 weeks of having everybody get used to me having some strange thing in class, because you have to get over that first hump of everybody kind of accepting that's just what you do. And I didn't understand that for a very long time. Can we go to slide 12?
Here,
There you go.
Yep, it's up there.
Awesome. Okay. Why is student participation so important? From the start, I wish I had someone to tell me that I had a voice. Not just a voice, but that my voice was the only one that matters. When I was first getting on IEPs, I was very young, so learning to voice my frustrations and problems in school to my mentors felt like I was doing something wrong. For example, if I were to say, sometimes I have trouble paying attention in class, I have trouble paying attention to my teacher because she talks too fast. I felt that I had said something wrong, something that I wasn't supposed to, that it wasn't my place to tell her how fast she could or could not speak. I needed someone to tell me that I could talk to these people as peers and not mentors when in this setting. My participation would have been a key to a successful learning environment if I had started out with the confidence to say what I was experiencing. With me, when I'm not actively problem solving with my teachers, I cannot create a solution that works. My success in school highly relies on me being able to voice myself. I can tell you that when I'm not proactively involved in my education and teachers, that it becomes almost impossible for me to keep up with my peers. I spend time working on assignments past due that I have no idea how to do. While I should be working on today's homework, it slowly builds up and eventually ends up affecting everything else in my life. I walk around with a big dark cloud of angry, anxious, upset paperwork, and my backpack is a little bit heavier. When I'm actively part of my education, all these problems go away. And I can spend my time not anxious and actually doing things that I like to do. All right. So I can either do the speech or I can go back to and do slide 4 and 6.
Phil, how much time do we have left?
Well, we
Okay.
we have 7 or 8 minutes, but if we go over, that's not a problem.
Okay. Do you
Okay.
want me to?
So yeah. So slide 4 first, I guess. Sorry I didn't do these in order. I figured you guys were crunched for time, so yeah.
No worries, you're doing great, David.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Why is youth involvement important and helps Why is youth involvement important and helps solve conflict? Wait, I definitely did read this one. I'm sorry about that. I read all of these. Awesome. I can do my speech now.
Okay, great. On you go.
All right. So I felt like I was repeating myself a little bit here because it wasn't all over the whole slideshow, but I'm a very big advocate for finding your voice and being able to speak up. And it took me a very long time to find my voice. I spent many years being angry and depressed because I was in school and I hated going to school. I didn't even make it through full days of school for a very long time. And then once things started to click and I started to be able to be successful in school, I was able to make friends, not be angry, and have a successful school grade. Like it affected everything else in my life. And this is a speech that I've made solely to let people know what it's like to find your voice and how, yeah, I'm just going to start. Speaking is a form of art. Some people think that as long as you follow the rules and guidelines learned in a basic literature class, that you can make a good speech. This is true, but just like any other form of art, these rules and techniques didn't exist until someone discovered and made them their own. Art comes in many other forms other than traditional color on canvas. But one thing stays the same, no matter what form of expression it takes. All art holds some form of message. No matter how basic the tools used to craft or the length of words used to write, the message is still sent out to be interpreted however the receiver chooses. So what is my message? My message comes from a boy who could not speak if asked. My ideas and dreams could not be expressed until practiced. This practical use of a rhetorics eluded me, seeming to be so far away. It wasn't until years later that the eloquence that I strived for seemed tangible. Tension grew to friction, and friction turned to heat. A burning desire now lay inside me with no means of an exit other than the motivation to grasp a tool of expression. The boy who could not speak chose to whisper, then talk, then speak, then yell and scream. With my new tools, I could not help but refine my expression and redefine myself. I now know what I want to say. I now know that with seldom words, I can make a speech and make a difference. So what is my message? Speak from your heart, and people will listen. Thank you. So that was it.
Wow, David, that was incredibly powerful. Thank you to all three of you. Let's see if we can get some of our questions asked and answered. And there's one here for you, David. Do you have suggestions on how parents and teachers could have helped you build your self-confidence? And how would you have wanted them to help you understand why you may have needed a squishy ball, for example?
Yeah, so I definitely can give Amy Walsh and my mother a lot of the credit for the amount of self-confidence that they helped me build. And regardless of how much I had and how much I have now isn't really the point, but what is the point is, like, when they were helping me build my self-confidence and they were doing things to help build those, it wasn't like they did specific things. It was spending time with me and making me feel good about myself and making me understand that I can succeed in a school setting. Because when you're failing all your classes and you have no friends and you're mad and you're angry and it's affecting everything else in your life, the one thing that you're stuck on is you're stuck on those thoughts. You can't think any other way. So if there's somebody there telling you, eventually you will succeed, you can do these things, I believe in you, I'm giving you the tools that you need, and all you have to do is learn how to use those tools, and eventually you'll be a successful person in the schooling system. And being told those things over and over it helps, and I think that's the one thing that helped. And if there was some other, like a curriculum or something that was made to help build kids with special needs and like build their confidence, I think that would be awesome. But I don't even know where to start with something like that.
And another question perhaps to any of you or all of you, how would you help get a student interested in participating in their IEP?
Do you want me to throw an answer?
Sure.
Okay. How I would get a student interested in his IEP? Well, my little cousin, he just moved to my town. I've been talking to him, and from what I hear is we are going to get him on an IEP. He definitely needs it, but he isn't necessarily happy to go talk to his teachers about issues that he's having in class because he wants to feel normal. He doesn't want to say like, hey, I'm having trouble with this, because when he's having trouble with that, he's looking around the classroom and he's thinking to himself, well, like, all these other kids are having an easy time working on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try and go to his IEP meetings with him, because, I mean, he kind of thinks I'm awesome and really cool and fun, but I can also tell him and teach him ways to talk to his teachers that make it not seem so bad. But because I'm there, I think that I might be giving him some of the confidence. And how I'm going to get him to go to these meetings is I'm going to tell him that if he starts going to these meetings, that he'll be able to find things and ways to be successful, and then he won't have such a hard time in school.
Great. Another question, maybe, and Sarah might be able to speak best to this. Has student-led IEPs increased parent participation?
So, according to research, yes. Specifically in DC, we did a very, the demonstration project we did was small. And the parents were involved in the demonstration project, but in terms of like actual data on increasing parent participation, if you look at the national data, it does increase parent participation.
Great. Another question has to do with suggestions to support nonverbal youth to advocate and fully participate in their IEP meetings.
Yeah, that was a question that that came up when we were doing some of this work, is how to support nonverbal students as well as students with more significant disabilities. I know that the Virginia I'm Determined project is focusing on that now, so I would suggest reaching out to them for some resources. Also, assistive technology. Getting creative about the ways that students participate. Students can show pictures. They can use assistive technology. It doesn't have to be a 20-slide PowerPoint where the student gets up and presents for 30 minutes. It can be a film that shows the life of a day in the life of the student, and you show the film. So it's really about getting creative about different ways to approach how they can participate. You know, how do they participate in class, and what mechanisms can be borrowed from that and translated into an IEP meeting. A lot of it's assistive technology, the use of images. But I do know that I'm Determined Virginia that's one of their focus areas, and I think they're developing resources. So I'd also encourage everyone to check out their website as well.
Great. Another question that I think for David and perhaps Monet, give some examples of how you handled social anxiety. What are some of the activities that you engaged in to help you manage that?
So Monet has an example, I think.
Great.
Like, how did you handle were you anxious about getting up in front of a group of adults?
Yes.
Me? Oh, sorry.
really shy in front of people, so I get nervous. So I probably might shut down for a little bit, and then once I get comfortable, I eventually start talking.
So what did you do to get comfortable? Were there strategies that you used?
I just sat there and listened, and then I took a minute to get myself together, and then I talked.
So I don't know if everybody could hear Monet. She's very soft-spoken, but she said that she sometimes shuts down when she has social anxiety and that she is really shy. And I've put her in a situation where she has to talk to 100 people on a webinar. But she said that she takes time during the meetings to sit calmly, and she chooses to listen to the other people in the meeting for a little bit. So maybe she just doesn't participate first, and she waits until she's comfortable and then picks that time to participate.
Great. And David, do you want to go ahead and answer that question, and then we'll wrap it up?
Sure. So I don't think I ever really prepared myself to go into an IEP meeting. It was more of having the experience of many, many IEP meetings over through grade school till middle school, and then it started becoming easier, and I started learning these skills that I needed. But I didn't necessarily fully need them because I had such great advocates with me most of the time, and but it definitely did help once I started participating in my own IEP meetings. It was a great skill to learn. I think what really just happened was that there was one week in like middle school where I was not doing very well, and I went into an IEP meeting that week, and all of a sudden it clicked, and I just realized that if I didn't speak up and say exactly what I needed, that I wasn't going to get it, and that I was going to continue to go into this cycle of not being able to be successful in class. But I definitely had my mother and various other people telling me very often that I needed to speak up, but I didn't speak up until I was ready to. And it definitely took a long time of finally being able to be comfortable in that scenario.
Well, you know, we want to thank you, all three of you, Sarah, David, Monet, for sharing such rich experiences with a national audience. We really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for joining us today and helping us try out a new platform. Right now, if you can, there's going to be a link in the chat box for a very brief Survey Monkey that would help us understand today's webinar. It'll help us evaluate it. So if you can click on that link, that would be fantastic, and that will just take a minute or two. Also, we want to announce our next webinar, which is titled Constructive Individual and Systemic Approaches to Helping Frequent Filers. It will occur on June 8th from 11:30 to 12:45. That's 11:30 Pacific time. This webinar will be conducted by Suzanne McDougall from the Pennsylvania Office of Dispute Resolution and Marshall Peter, the CADRE former director. More information about the webinar will soon be available on the CADRE website, and we look forward to you joining us again. And I believe the link is in the chat box right there in the bottom. If you click on that, you'll be able to evaluate today's webinar. And again, deep appreciation to all of you for joining us, and we know we ran a little bit long today, but it was well worth it. And again, thank you. We'll leave this link up for a little while longer, which is again at the bottom of the chat box to help us evaluate today's webinar. Again, thank you very much, and a special thank you to all three of our outstanding presenters.
Well, I just want to thank you guys for listening. I definitely like being able to have a voice, and you guys are giving me the opportunity to do that.
You're very welcome. You and Monet have outstanding youth voices and represent your peers very, very well.
Thank you from Sarah and Monet at School Talk.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to end the webinar. Thank you for everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.